Okay.
Hi, Ann. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Brett. What a great movie. And I did notice just a couple of refrains from Bing Crosby.
This is true.
David Bowie was so many things. I mean, he was a rock star, an iconoclast, movie star. But to me, and you show this really well in the film, he was mostly a walking, talking work of art. And that's certainly the impression that I believe he left behind, a legacy. Would you comment on that?
Well, I think that he was a canvas that refracted back, that we projected upon, and he was so aware of that relationship between the spectator and the artist that he was able to create art that invited us to sort of reveal truths about our own selves rather than himself. So like the more you listen to David Bowie, the more you learn about yourself. You don't really know any get to David Jones. And it's kind of masterful. I mean, it's really, that's why I think we can listen to him for the rest of our lives. Just it's constantly revealing sort of new truths, but it's not him, it's us that are revealing the truths.
Very good point. It's amazing. How did you arrange and who did you speak to in order to get 5 million assets from the Bowie estate?
Well, I had a meeting with David in 2007 to discuss collaborating on a hybrid nonfiction film that would have required him to shoot for about 40 days. And at the time, I didn't know this. He was in sort of retirement because of his heart condition. So after the meeting, his manager, Bill Zisbach, phoned me and said, unfortunately, the timing didn't work, but David really appreciated the meeting. Years later, I started developing something called the IMAX music experience. And the idea was that I was kind of over music docs. I just felt that they were all kind of cookie cutter and that unavoidably, just they all kind of end up sort of becoming the same thing. And I was like, why are we wasting this real estate to tell the A through Z Wikipedia of someone's life that you can go read about, when honestly, I just want to be overwhelmed and immersed in imagery and hear my favorite music in IMAX 12.0 or Dolby Atmos. So I created something called the IMAX music experience. And we were going down the road with the Beatles and every great band. And in January 2016, David passed. And about a month later, I called up his executor, who was Bill Zisbach, who was in the meeting with me. And I shared with him my intent of doing a non-biographical musical experience. And he said, I think this may work. David saved pretty much everything and has actually been adding to the archives by purchasing at auctions anonymously and whatnot. But he never wanted to participate. He didn't know what it was going to be used for. The only thing he knew is he didn't want to be participated in kind of a trad documentary. So I think everything just kind of gelled, and Bill said, okay, give me a call back next year. I think we could do this. And so at that point, the estate provided me access to everything in their archive. I worked with their archivist for the last 5 years, digitizing, bringing everything into my office. At the same time, I sent the archival producer I work with around the world, collecting every piece of media in existence related to Bowie, so that we had not only the stuff on YouTube and out at BBC and everything else, but we had Bowie's personal archive to add to it. So when I sat down to screen, I do believe I was screening pretty much every known piece of media in existence related to David Bowie.
It's up there. It is, as you say, it is overwhelming in the best possible way. It's quite stunning. And frankly, I can't wait to see it again. So, you're talking about his unknowable nature. So you don't think that his lyrics really express much about Davy Jones?
Of course they do, because one can't divorce themselves entirely from their art. But David was doing a cut-up process. So, some of the times he was often writing using words because of the sounds, the consonants or the vowels in them. So I don't think he was setting, I don't want to try to read his intent. But I think that we all extract, and obviously his earlier stuff is a little easier, more revealing, but, I think 50 different people can have 50 different interpretations of life on Mars, but it has the same effect, which is all makes us feel like we're not alone.
All right. You say he's unknowable, but the transformation in him as a person from, a young fella in his 20s and 30s to in his 50s and 60s, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible. How do you explain it in the best way that you know?
Well, I could tell you that that one of the first days I was on the job, David's longtime producer, Tony Biscani, invited me into his studio. And he said, I want to play you some stems. And he put on a song called Signet Committee from 1969. And at the end of the song, David sings out, I want to live, I want to live, I want to live. And Tony isolated David's vocal, and I could hear him sobbing uncontrollably as he was singing this. And here was a man at the very beginning of his life, 18 maybe, singing with the intensity of a man on his last day who doesn't want to go. And that's how David approached his life. He made every day, he knew even then what most of us don't realize until, as David says in the film, the moment you realize you've lived more days than you have in front of you is when you can really start living. I think that's true. It was certainly true for me when I heard him say that. But I think David really understood from the very beginning how limited our time on Earth is. And he wanted to make the most of it. So he called himself a collector, but he was a collector of experiences. And when he felt that he understood something, he abandoned it. And the courage that he had to sort of throw away all of his musical learnings to try to create new musical languages and potentially risk his fame, fortune, and success to satisfy a creative itch was truly remarkable. He was very aware of making sure that he was putting himself in these environments, and he's just so inspiring. And it's also, at the end of the day, it's sort of like the film's kind of a love story too. It's an interesting. There was a narrative that I was pursuing that I kind of ended up leaving in there, but it was like he's sort of. The one thing that was kind of enabling him to do what he did, but that was missing from his life, was he didn't have a home, metaphorically and physically. And as he says in the film, there's this really incredible interview with a woman from BBC. And she asked him about, does he like love? And he goes, oh, yes, I love love. And she goes, well, when you love someone, that means you have to share your life. And he goes, oh, no, I can't. I'm too selfish to do that. I can't let anyone in that way because I need my work. And I related to that in many ways. And then David arrives at a point later in life where he's realized, particularly coming out of the 80s, that that wasn't fulfilling to him, the mainstream success. And I think that was kind of one of the last oceans he had to sail through to ultimately get to a point where he could accept love. And that transformed him. And in the movie, without giving it away, sort of lands very close to that point. And someone said to me, well, why did you not go deeper into his musical catalog and beyond the obvious, which is I'm not doing that type of film. This is experiential, not learned. Or you learn things that are intangible, And I said, but when he met Iman, he no longer had to put himself in dangerous environments. He found a way to create from the safety and the comfort of, and in fact, inspired by his domestic life upstate. So He's, listen, I've seen so much footage of David. I think I've read everything there is. I'm in awe of this man. I mean, just as beautiful as he is outside, he's as brilliant on the inside.
That's great. That's a wonderful way to close this out. I know why you did the film now. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anne.